Hey guys, Robert with 3D Printscape. So today I'm going to show you how to set up multiple printers on a Klipper device. I'm using my Pad7 here as an example, but it will work with anything running Klipper. And if you have the KlipperScreen like I do on the Pad7, I also cover that. If you don't have the KlipperScreen, you can just disable that in the actual build as well. This video assumes that you have whatever device you're working with already online and connected to your network. You're going to have to SSH into it and run some commands. I'm going to put those commands in the description below. Then you're also going to have to use a tool like WinSCP in order to get the firmware files if you're wanting to flash the printers with those. I walked through everything you need to do to get this set up and working. In this example, I created 3 Klipper instances on this device because there's 3 usable USB ports. I only have 2 of them mapped, but I left the shell there for the other one in case I wanted to add another one in the future. If you have any questions about what I'm covering in this video or would like to see any other videos, go ahead and leave a comment below or join us on Discord. Thanks. Alright guys, so we're here at the computer and I'm connected to the Pad7 interface. As a reminder, you can connect to it with the host name in most networks, which by default is btt-pad7.local. If you are having issues connecting to that, you can use the IP address, but it might cause other issues with the multiple instances. I just haven't tested it that way. I will note that I was having an issue like that on my home network, and the issue ended up being related to multicast not being enabled on my mesh network. I'm using Orbi Mesh, and that was disabled by default. So once I enabled that, I was able to actually connect using the host name. If you have multiple Pad7s on your network, you'll probably want to change the name on one of them so that they're using different names. That way you know them apart. Alright, so here's my existing setup. I just have the one printer connected, which is my Ender 3 V2. I want to make a note here that when going through this process, you are going to lose all of your settings. So if there's anything you want to try to retain, you'll want to make note of all of that now so that you can transfer it over later. Alright, first thing we're going to have to do is connect to the Pad7 with PuTTY. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. And then I'm going to put the host name in. And connect. If you haven't connected before, you're going to get presented this alert. It's just a security alert. Just go ahead and accept it. And then you're going to log in with BIQU as the username and password. Alright, now let me change my screen a little bit so I can put this side by side. Alright, now we're going to have to install a couple utilities. We need Git so that we can pull down the latest Klipper install and update helper, which is going to show us what we have installed, and we're going to use that to uninstall everything currently there and reinstall it with 3 instances. I'm going to go with 3 instances here because it matches the number of usable USB ports on the device. And I don't want to have to reconfigure it if I wanted to add a 3rd printer. And if you do plan on adding a USB extension to get more connections, I would think about that now so that you can set up the number of instances you want now instead of having to go back and redo it all later. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and do 3 now. I've got 2 name printers, and I'm going to leave the 3rd one just as like printer 3 or something. I am going to put these commands that I'm using in the description below, but first thing, like I said, we want to do is install Git if it's not already there. So it's going to be sudo apt-get install git-y. Alright, so Git is already on this installation, so I didn't have to worry about that. But it's worth just checking and make sure it's up to date before moving on. Now we want to pull down the Klipper install and update helper from Git. So we're going to use this command, so change directory back to home and git clone from GitHub, and using this repository to grab everything for the update helper. Alright, so we have all of that. Now, if you're looking at this name, it stands for Klipper install and update helper. So that's an easy way to remember what it is. Alright, now we want to go ahead and run the install script. So we're going to go into the helper folder and then run the script. Alright, this is showing us what we have installed. So we have 1 instance of Klipper, so we have Klipper installed with 1 using Python 3. We have 1 instance of Moonraker API installed. Then we have Mainsail, which is our web interface, and then we have Crow's Nest. Crow's Nest is optional and it's used for streaming. If you look at the current instance, It's actually it's running but failed because there's no webcam or anything connected to it. So I'm just going to uninstall this entirely. All right, so now it's giving us our commands over here what to do. So we want to go through and remove all of these. I'm just going to start by removing the Moonraker API, then Klipper, and then the remaining two. It's also worth noting if you want to switch from mainsail to fluid, you can do that here as well. All right, so to remove, we want to hit 3, enter. Now it's asking what to remove. So let's go ahead and do Moonraker first, so it'll be 2. And you can see over here, I lost connection, and that's what we're going to end up having for a while. All right, so now we want to go ahead and you can hit B to go back if you want to see the options again, but I'm going to stay in the remove menu, so I'm going to go back and hit 3. Now we're going to do Klipper, so 1. Then we had Crow's Nest, so which is going to be 9. Yes. And mainsail, which is 3. Now if we hit back, we still see KlipperScreen installed, so we want to uninstall that too really quick. So let's go ahead and go back in there. So 3, KlipperScreen is 7. Alright, now if we hit back, everything should be removed. Alright, now we're going to run through the install, and we're going to do Klipper first. So go ahead and hit 1 for install, as you can see here. Now it's asking you to type the password for this user again, so it's BIQU. And we're going to hit 1 to install Klipper. Now it's asking if we want to use Python 3 or Python 2, 2.7 specifically, which is legacy. We're going to hit 1 for Python 3. Now it's asking us how many instances we want to install. The default is 1. Like I said, we want to do 3 in this case. If you are going to be doing more than 3, just pay attention to the resources on the system, because each one of them will end up chewing through resources. So 3 to 4 is probably the sweet spot for one of these devices. If you go beyond that, you could potentially have performance issues. Alright, so I'm going to change that from 1 to 3. And then assign custom name. I'm going to do yes. Then it's going to ask you the name for each instance. If you don't know what printers you're connecting, you can just do like printer 1, 2, 3, and then go back and change it later. I know I'm going to be connecting my Ender 3 V2 and my Ender 3 Pro. So I'm going to put those 2 in there, and then just printer 3, just generic for the last one. All right, so I'm just going to do Ender 3 V2. Now for instance 2, I'm going to do Ender 3 Pro. And then printer 3 for my third one, just leaving it generic. And it is now going through and cloning everything it needs to create the 3 instances. Now that that's done, if we hit B to go back, we can see here that we have 3 instances installed. Now let's go ahead and do the Moonraker API. So go to hit 1 again, and 2 for Moonraker. Now it detects that there are 3 instances of Klipper, so it automatically defaulted to 3 because they should be 1-to-1 with each other. So go ahead and hit enter. Then it's asking you to confirm that you want to install 3 instances. So yes. Alright, now that that's done, we can confirm by going back, and we see that there are 3 instances installed. Now I'm going to go and reinstall Moonsail and the KlipperScreen. So go back with 1, and go ahead and select 3 for Mainsail. And then hit yes to download the recommended macros. Alright, now that that's done, let's go ahead and hit 5 to install KlipperScreen. Alright, now that that's done, let's go ahead and hit back and confirm we've got 3 instances of Klipper, 3 of Moonraker, Mainsail, and KlipperScreen installed. If you are going to be using a webcam, you can install Crow's Nest as well, but I don't plan to with the connected to this. So let's go ahead and hit Q to quit. Now let's go ahead and reboot. So you can go ahead and restart the device or just do sudo reboot. And we'll go ahead and reconnect once that comes back online. Alright, after you wait like a minute or two, or you know that the device is rebooted, you can go ahead and reconnect with PuTTY. So just do restart session, and then log back in with BIQU and BIQU. Now if we do an LS, we can see here that we've got multiple data files, or LS, just so you can see a little bit differently. We've got Ender 3 Pro data, Ender 3 V2, and Printer 3. So those are the 3 instances that are going to be used. Now we should be able to do a retry over here. We did not change the device name, so all of that will be the same. Then we're presented with the standard error saying that we don't have Klipper set up. All right, next we want to go ahead and add the printers in here. So let's go to the power menu here. Actually, before we do that, I want to make a note. If you did want to change the host name, you can do so by doing sudo nano /boot and then system config. And in here is where you're specifying the host name. So you can see here, this is the host name. If you change this and then save it, then reboot, you would be able to connect with the new name. Just make sure you save the file when you're done, or if you're decided that you're not going to, just hit Control X to exit the file. Alright, so now we need to actually set up the additional printers. So we'll go over to our web interface, go to settings here, go down to printers and add printer. So this 7125 is the default port. So this is going to be our Ender 3 V2. So we're going to specify the host name here, which is going to match what you have or what you connected to. And then on port 7125. And then we'll add the next one, which is going to be the same name, just 7126. And then one more time for 7127 for the third instance. If you're adding more instances, just increment the last digit. Alright, so now that we got the 3 printers added, let's go ahead and set the default name for the first one that we're already connected to, which is going to be Ender 3 V2. And now if we go up to our menu, go to printers, we can see all 3 printers here. So we can switch between the printers by doing that. And it might take a minute for the name to change, but you can see that it did end up changing. Now let's go over to the second one. I'm going to do Ender 3 Pro. So just go back here, go to machine, Ender 3 Pro. And I'm going to go to the third one and just label it Printer 3. Alright, now if I go back to the first printer, you can see, well, like I said, it takes a second for them to update the names, but I updated all the names. Now that we have everything added to Mainsail, we actually have to add it to the screen, because if you go look at the physical screen right now, you're only going to see the default instance. So this will be the last thing we have to do here in PuTTY. Related to the multiple instances, we still have to create our firmware files, which we can go through and do here after we do that. Okay, so we need to go ahead and create a KlipperScreen.config file. So we'll do that with sudo cat KlipperScreen.conf. Alright, now if you do an ls, you can see that it created the file we were looking for. Now we have to edit that file. So we'll do that with nano. So sudo nano KlipperScreen.config and hit enter. Now I'm going to paste the config in here. I will put this below and you can modify it as needed. But basically creating a main, setting the default printer to Ender 3 V2, creating the 3 printers, so Ender 3 V2, Ender 3 Pro, and Printer 3, tying it to ports 7125, 7126, and 7127. So with that, we'll go ahead and save this. So just do Control X, save modified buffer, which is yes. I'm just going to write it to that file. You can verify that it wrote it by doing sudo cat on that file. You can see the contents of the file here. Now we want to restart that service. So we're going to do sudo service KlipperScreen restart, and it should pull that service in. Alright, now if we go look at the KlipperScreen, we'll see that all 3 printers show up, which I'll jump over there and show you that really quick. And then we'll come back and then I'm going to walk you through setting up the firmware for the first printer. Then you would just duplicate the process for the other 2 or 3 or however many you're setting up. Alright guys, so we're here at the KlipperScreen. I know we don't have the firmware set up yet, but if you go to here, you can see the 3 printers. So Ender 3 Pro, Ender 3 V2, and printer. Allows you to switch between those. So it's actually quite nice. Alright, so we're back here at the computer and I have the instructions on how to set up the firmware. So we're going to want to follow this. So it's basically making the firmware with some parameters that we'll be grabbing from the config examples. So here we're just going to do cd Klipper, oops, and then make menu config. And we're going to want to jump over to the Klipper GitHub page and get the config for the printer we're using. So I'm going to be using the Ender 3 V2. Alright, so here we have Ender 3 V2 2020 config. And it gives us the parameters that we need up here and kind of tells us what to do. Alright, so it's telling us what to select here and then telling us that once we build it, we'll put the output on a SD card and put that in the printer. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is select the controller architecture. So scroll down and hit enter on that. And then if you look here, we have the STM32F103. So it's STM32 architecture. So we'll go down to that, go to space to select it. And then it already selected that processor model, but if it had a different processor model here, you can go into this menu and select the one that is specified. Now we want to set the bootloader offset, which if you look over here, it's 28 KB. And the communication port, which is going to be USART1 on PA10 and 9. So go ahead and select that. So those are the configs. And then we'll hit Q to go to exit this, and make sure you hit yes to save or Y to save, and then we'll hit make. Now that it created the file, we got to connect through it with SCP. I use WinSCP, so we're going to connect with that. Just go up to new site here, make sure SFTP is selected. The host name is going to be btt-pad7.local. And then you can specify the username and password here if you want, but just log in. Accept that. Username BIQU, password BIQU. Now over here we have our connection to the Pad7, and it says that the firmware is under out/klipper.bin. So we'll go into Klipper, out, and firmware-bin. You can see here that it has the current date and timestamp. Then we need to get our SD card, which I have here. You can either drag it over or connect over here and drag it between the two. Now this name should be unique, so you don't have any issues. I just put today's date, 08/02/23. And we'll go ahead and put this in the printer. Make sure it pulls the firmware in, and then we'll configure a couple things back in Klipper itself. We're here at the printer. I'm going to disconnect the cable. Go ahead and put the SD card in there. And power on. Now it should pull that firmware in for us. So just give it like 10 seconds. If you had Marlin on there before, the screen would switch over from that back to just this Creality or a blank screen. So then we'll go ahead and power it back off, take out the SD card, and reconnect the cable. Alright, now let's hop back over to the computer. Alright, now we're back here at the computer. Let's make sure we're on our Ender 3 V2, which is what we're working with. Go into Machine, switch from root down to config examples, and then we want to get the one for the V2. Alright, so Ender 3 V2 2020, select that and download. Then we're going to want to extract that. And then rename this to printer. And then we'll go back up to config. We have printer.config here, but we're going to want to upload file. We'll grab the one that we just modified and upload that. That will replace the existing one. Then if we go into it, that's the configuration for the printer. I'm just going to go ahead and do save and restart here because we want to restart the printer anyways. Now we should have the connection to the printer, but the main cell config is missing from it. So if we go to more information here, open this to a new tab, we just have to add one line to it. So if we go to the documentation here, we just copy this one line and it says add it to the printer.config. So we'll go back over to our machine, printer.config. Then I'm going to just go ahead and drop this at the bottom. Save and restart. Now if we go up to dashboard, that error should have gone away, and we can go to console and like send G28 to home it. And then that will go ahead and home everything. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and do that for the second printer offline real quick. And then we'll jump over to the KlipperScreen and I'll show you how it works. Alright guys, please excuse the dust from this printer. I haven't used it in a bit, but here, let's go over. Now I'm going to select Ender 3 Pro. Go to Move and home all, should start homing that printer. Then I can go over to Ender 3 V2 and control this one as well. So you can see it's doing a home on both of them. So that's really all there is to it. Alright guys, so that was everything you need to do to get your Klipper device set up with multiple instances, so you can connect multiple printers. If you're not familiar with Klipper, that might have been a lot to take in, but if you have any questions or are running into issues, feel free to leave a comment below or join us on Discord, and we'll try to help out as much as we can.